Many of them who are in this are TED speakers. This session will be moderated by Sahej Suri. Sahej is an investor at the Rice Fund, the world's largest impact investing firm managed by TPG. He invests across education, financial services, healthcare, food, agriculture, and energy climate. He is a board observer of Insight, Reflexion, and Neatio. I'm very impressed with Sahed's enthusiasm, energy, and he is one of the youngest members on this track. Let's all put our hands together and give Sahed Suri a warm welcome. Sahed Suri, take it away.
Thanks, Anu, for the warm introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here moderating this panel on purpose-driven companies. As Anu mentioned, my name is Sahed Suri. I work at the Rise Fund, which is an impact investing fund managed by TPG. We're focused both on commercial returns as well as equally on measuring impact. One of the great joys of my job is to talk to mission-driven entrepreneurs on a daily basis. And to that end, I'm excited to be joined with some terrific mission-driven entrepreneurs. Gayatri Vasudevan of LaborNet, Madan Padaki of OneBridge, Mickey Austin of PeopleShores, and Wes Wasson of Dreamstart Labs. And so to kick it off, it'd be great if each of you could give a brief introduction of yourself and your company, as well as talk about the main issue you're trying to solve. So we'll go in alphabetical order for this one. So Gayatri, Madan, Mickey, and then Wes.
I don't know whether to say good morning or good evening. So I'm just going to have a neutral hi, everybody. I run a social enterprise called LaborNet, which basically works on two issues. One is building capabilities, so workforce development, and the other is to ensure that they have decent wages, which means either full-time employment with Social Security or micro-entrepreneurship with all the bells and whistles of Social Security. So that's been a decade of work that we've done. We worked with about 1 million lives we've impacted directly. So they've been certified and or have wages through us. That's really what we have. So we have two arms. One is called Sahi Work, which is right work, and the other is called Sambhav, which is possibilities. So that's what we do.
Hi, everybody. Delighted to be here. Madan Padaki, founder and CEO of OneBridge. We call ourselves as the Village Commerce Network, which works towards ushering abundance to our villages by providing access, choice, and convenience to our village consumers, but critically operating through a local entrepreneur who's most typically a youth, and helping that entrepreneur generate decent incomes by providing these services to the villages. So we operate in about 7,000 villages of southern India, and we deliver digital services, we deliver assisted commerce models, last mile delivery. We're now looking at healthcare, financial inclusion products into these villages, thereby reducing transaction costs for our consumers and generating incomes for our entrepreneurs so that they don't have to migrate out looking for work to any of the cities. That's what we do at OneBridge.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Mickey Austin. I'm the CEO of PeopleShores. Quickly, I've got about 35 years experience in outsourcing, both in the US and internationally. I lived in Asia Pacific for 13 years. Different aspects of my career. I was a service provider, a consultant, an entrepreneur, worked for companies. And so I've seen all aspects from around the world of outsourcing. PeopleShores, the company I'm CEO of, is a public benefit corporation here in the US. Our founder, Murali Vulagante, also founded Rural Shores in India about 12 years ago that grew to 13 centers and employed over 11,000 people through that time period. So we started PeopleShores in the US to, in fact, do the same thing. Our mission is to build tech centers in rural communities and inner cities. That's exampled by, we have a center in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and the southern delta of Mississippi. We're also now working on one in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. We have an inner city center in San Jose, California, and now we're also talking to Chicago about a center in the south side of Chicago. Our goal is to have 50 centers across the US. We recruit and hire people through an ecosystem of supporters, which is government agencies, social, other training partners, and academic institutions. Our focus is to help employees get a career that they would not have otherwise had the opportunity to get. So we focus on the underemployed and disadvantaged workforce. Probably 90% of our staff is minority, and out of that, probably 78, 80% are women. So our objective is to change lives and change communities. We do that by signing long-term outsourcing contracts, which I know how to do. I've done it my whole life. And then we use that to employ and build and develop these centers. So it's a very rewarding experience, and appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about it this morning. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And so my name is Wes, and I spent the first 20 years or so of my career in senior leadership roles at traditional tech firms. I'm currently the co-founder and CEO of Dreamstart Labs. We are a social impact fintech startup and operating in about 15 countries across Africa, Asia, and just getting into Latin America. So our model is solving a really fundamental problem. So there's, as most of you probably know, about 2 billion people around the world who are unbanked and mostly in emerging markets. We have an app called Dreamsave. And what Dreamsave does is it allows people to create informal community banks, right? So they don't have access to traditional financial services. They get about 30 people together. They form an informal community bank. These go by different names, self-help groups in India, which you may be familiar with, or savings groups around the world. And then they use that informal bank to collectively save, take loans from each other. And then the interest from those loans all go back to the group members as profit. So the typical group is making 20, 30% profit returns just from their own group from generating additional income. So it's a fabulous model. Dreamsave is free. We make the process much simpler for them. We're also creating data through that process. We then use that data to create credit scores for the members. And our business model is involved in offering additional loans and microequity back to the groups to further accelerate their success. So it's kind of a win-win for both the groups, for the economies, where about half of the economy is completely off the grid and sort of out of practice, and then we can turn it into a profitable business. So yeah, happy to be here.
Great. Well, thanks all for giving your background and obviously solving some really pressing issues. Gayatri, could you tell us a little bit about what sparked your interest in the world of impact and mission-driven companies?
Actually, in a sense, it was by chance. I've been in the development world all my life. I had worked with the UN, International Labour Organization, for about close to about 10 years. So I was more used to working in policy environments and grant-giving environments. But I was finding that states' ability to do execution was poor. And therefore, I thought what is needed is action. And whereas not-for-profits, I felt were very project-dependent. So the funding was very project-dependent. And in 2007-8, when this was happening, social enterprises, impact investing were just buzzwords. Just about people were recognizing it. And it sounded sustainable. It sounded like something you create value. At the same time, you don't have to be project dependent, which is what state was also doing, as well as what the not-for-profit world was doing. So I think that's really what drove me more than anything to create a large mission which is sustainable and which can grow on its own without project funding.
Great. And Wes and Mickey, both of you joined the impact world, having been in large profitable jobs in corporate America. And maybe some of the audience can relate to that. Do you have any regrets doing so, or what have your observations been in the impact world?
Yeah,
and maybe we'll start with Wes and then go with Mickey.
Sure, happy to. So yeah, so if you'd asked me that question about 1 year ago, I would probably say the biggest thing I miss is flying business class. But since that doesn't exist for anybody anymore, that's sort of been neutralized. But I'd say, first of all, real quick, I kind of take an approach that we should be creating purpose and impact in any kind of job. I don't care what kind of role you're playing, whether your company is specifically founded to create a social purpose or not. So for first 20 years of my career, it was very much about how do you wake up every morning, look in the mirror, and say, I'm solving important problems, right, for people and making an impact in the humans that you work with every day and interact with. So I think that's kind of a starting point. It wasn't this sort of late epiphany coming into it. Absolutely, there are things you miss, right? There are things you miss about kind of the vibe of being a leader in a large organization and all of that. But there's not been a single day or a moment, I think, that it's been a regret. I think to me, the satisfying thing is, every day when I go out and visit, have an opportunity to visit our users, it's, they're telling me stories about, your Dreamsave app. Because of that, my kids are getting an education. My husband respects me for the first time. Look at this. I used to live in this dirt floor, place with no permanent roof. And this is the place we built with this income. Like, there's nothing that reminds you of why you're working so hard to do things that are profoundly difficult than that. So yeah, no regret.
Certainly the same thing for me. Absolutely no regrets. Leaving one part of business and going to another that really is purpose driven. And I don't know. I've got you, Sahej. I think you're maybe the youngest guy on the panel. I'm probably the oldest. I'm 67 years old. I've had 45 years work experience. I've worked around the world. I've worked for different types of companies. And I can just tell you this, I mean, you don't typically get up in the morning when you're working for a large consultant or a large service provider. You're thinking about, how can I sell that next deal? How can I make that target? How can I please Wall Street? And I can tell you, ever since joining People Shores, it's about, how can we hire more people? How can we have a bigger impact? And because that's truly at the heart of what companies like mine and companies like all of you and the purposes that you have, it is absolutely a difference. You think of business differently. You can see the impact. I can be in Clarksdale, Mississippi, a town of 20,000 people. I can go into a restaurant. They find out who you work for, and then they spend 10 minutes telling you what a big difference it's made in their community. So number one, you get the ability to feel good, but you also visibly see people's lives change, people that get careers that they wouldn't have had, and communities that really are visibly impacted. So never any regrets, not 1 minute, and every day enjoy, what I'm doing.
That's wonderful. So Gayatri and Madan, if you can tell us a little bit about what the world of purpose-driven companies look like, on the inside. How does this compare to a traditional profit-driven business or nonprofits?
So Madan, I think, will be able to take the corporate versus the thing. So let me go the other way. Let me go how it differs from a UN organization to a corporate. I think that would be a better example. In the UN, the United Nations set of organizations, we largely work with the state. So it is about policies, it is about capacity building at the policy level, seeing that capacity is implemented. That is the task. So if the state systems are not working, it's difficult. Whereas in an impact investment, in a company which is a social enterprise, here I think the rules are different. Here you need to look at revenue, you have to look at margins, you have to look at the numbers impact. It is all three mixed together. Whereas there it is about the impact that you make and the amount of money that you spend. Here you have to conserve money as well as this. I think that's the biggest difference that I see is the way the change in the, it's a mirror the other side.
Thanks, Gayatri. Just to add to that, I completely agree with what Nikki and Wes talked about, that It's the core purpose that drives you. When I sold my previous venture to one of India's largest education groups, spent a few years as head of strategy and innovation, and moved out on the nonprofit side and subsequently to create the social enterprise. A lot of people ask me, so how's life on the other side? What's the different? And I frankly struggled with that answer for a few months, and then realized that probably the world is not cleaved into enterprises and social enterprises, but actually the world should be cleaved into enterprises and anti-social enterprises, right? So how do you make sure that every enterprise that exists out there has the purpose of the social impact embedded deep into its soul, into its DNA, and everything that you do subsequently, you behave like an enterprise, right? So I think that's been the philosophy, and it's the intersection of doing good, feeling good, and making good money. And it's not the tyranny of the hour. Many of us get caught into this thing of, oh, you can either do good or feel good by just writing checks or whatever, and or you can make good money. I think the challenge and the beauty of an enterprise model is that you have to operate at that intersection. And how do you find that sweet spot? How do you build the culture? How do you build the metrics? How do you build the model so that you can always say, okay, we are in that sweet spot where the primary goal the communities that you impact and the investors who work with you are all happy, right? And that's the challenging balance, but I don't think it's impossible to find. We have to work harder than a corporate or an NGO, but I think that's what the social enterprise is all about.
Yeah, and Madan, that's an important point. Maybe to double click on it a little bit more. So I think there's a common misconception that if you're a mission-driven company, that you can't make money or you have to really sacrifice on returns. And I've seen through my own lens at the Rise Fund how that's not true. Maybe if you can double click on balancing profits with impact, some of those challenges that come with it. And then Wes, if you want to jump in after, that'd be great as well.
Sure, so I think that's a great follow-on question. When I say that we have to operate at the intersection, it is the moments of truth that really show who you are, right? For example, when you're having a bad quarter, what does the conversation of the board look like, right? Is the board telling you, listen, we know we can make more money by cutting margins that you pay to your entrepreneurs for the short term, right? Or is the board telling you that, listen, don't touch the entrepreneur stake, let's figure out ways in which we can increase incomes for everybody. Right? So it is dilemmas like this that really shine the spotlight on who you are, right? And it is the decisions that you take in points of time like this that make you sway from one, type of an entity to another. So it's very conscious calls that we have to take on. Any call that you take, we have to wait on who we really are, what difference are we trying to make, is this call in the short term and the long term upholding that value that we have, right? So it's not that you wake up one day and say, oh, we want to take this call. You live this dilemma every minute. And you make some mistakes, you learn from the mistakes, and then you say, okay, here is how I need to stay this course.
Yeah, I'd say that resonates with me as well. And I think, one thing from my perspective is even the way the question, we always frame it as, balancing these two. I would say if you find yourself constantly struggling with the balance between social purpose and profit, then it's a signal to you that you've got it misaligned, right? Because the only way this is successful is if you have an alignment where what I do to build a successful company benefits my customers, benefits my stakeholders, benefits the beneficiaries that we're trying to solve, right? It's just like when you don't have product market fit as a startup, like like there's something tension, like you go back and get it aligned. And so absolutely it's hard, right? I mean, it's not trivial, but I think also Madan's comments about board being in a line or investors being aligned. One of the things we've specifically done is we founded Dreamstart Labs also as a public benefit corp, like Mickey mentioned up front. So what you do there is it's effectively we're state of Delaware corporation. So from the IRS perspective, it's 100% a for-profit C corp, but there's a signal built into your your corporate papers saying we are not going to make decisions as a company exclusively based on maximizing shareholder value. We're also going to have this social purpose, and it's a signal to everybody else. So that's number one, because if you don't bring in investors and stakeholders who recognize that upfront, share that mission, and say this is what I'm in for as well, then it leads to that sense of asking the question of balance. And if you're asking that question, you've got something misaligned. Yeah.
That's super helpful. Maybe shifting gears a little bit, and if we could briefly touch on this. Obviously, COVID has changed, our world on a personal level, but also in the world of business and impact. Maybe Wes and Gayatri, and we'll start with you, Wes. If you can touch a little bit about how COVID has impacted both your business as well as industry, and what fundamental shifts you've been seeing.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it quick in the interest of time. But as you can imagine, we're working in these emerging markets and rural areas and all sorts of things. So when COVID first hit, we were in Rwanda, Tanzania, and just started in the Philippines. So we're just starting to branch out there. And you first have this sort of existential discussions internally, like did this thing hit too soon? Is this time to like retrench and just ride out the storm? And we debated that, seriously, and made a fundamental bet that COVID was going to bring an awareness of the fact that the old methods of doing these informal community banks with people sitting around calculating things on paper, putting money in metal boxes, it was going to become apparent to everybody that method had to die, and it did. And so we kind of leaned into it, and we used that opportunity, even though it was harder, to figure out. We're now in like 15 countries globally. So we've opened up country after country where we've never had anybody who was with the company before ever set foot in those countries. So we had to learn, like, how do you, launch Bangladesh with thousands of users and never, kind of fly over there and go out in land cruisers and see people and stuff like that. Those created disciplines and business processes that I think are accelerating our success by years over what we would have had otherwise. So, it's not been easy, but I think it's ultimately going to be, quite beneficial. Yeah. I'll just say one kind of note there. We have partners in some of these countries who have actually told me a year ago, we don't think our folks are ready for digitization. Now they're telling me we're going to throw away half our land cruiser fleet and go digital, right? So you think about, like, even just the impact on environment and everything else it can be profound.
For us, it was quite a painful transition. So last March, we saw our training centers shut down completely. Our workers, where we had thought we had put them in decent jobs, suddenly many of them lost their jobs. So it was almost I would say about 4 to 5 months of intense pain. And then we pivoted. We said the need of the hour was full-time jobs. The need of the hour was complete entrepreneurship. And healthcare. So we launched 3 absolutely new verticals in the month of July. And I think our healthcare, we've launched telemedicine, we've launched help desk helplines for healthcare, and we're scaling that up. And we're staffing, we're seeing the doctors, nurses, paramedics trained as well as staffed. And in this period of time, I think that's growing even beyond our comprehension. So the scale of growth has been tremendous in the last few months, and I think this month particularly has been let's just say, beyond our capacity. So I think that's one thing, but I think it's also taken an emotional toll. So COVID has taken, I would say, at the enterprise level, we're grappling with how to do scale. At a personal level, I think a lot of our employees are deeply affected by how it's affected livelihoods as well as now health. Their own health, because they're frontline workers, their own safety. I think these were things that as an workforce development education company, we never faced. So this is the first time. There was a lot of digitization which had to happen. So we launched our, fortunately, we were in the final stages of sort of beta testing. So online training was not something we did. So that became the lifeline actually to do capacity building now. But complete change in sectors. I think that's the big change for us. Sanitization, health has become very, very important for us.
Great. Well, that's super helpful. And, obviously COVID has been a tragedy that's affected us in many ways, but always interesting to see how nimble you guys have been in terms of adapting the business model. I think we have time for one, maybe two questions. So I'll ask Madan and Mickey to give some advice to first-time entrepreneurs that are potentially interested in joining the impact space. Maybe go back a few years of time. If you were an entrepreneur, what advice would you give yourself?
Sure, Sahej. I resonate a lot with what someone said so beautifully, that you're born twice. First was when you're actually born, and the second when you discover your purpose in life. I think for entrepreneurs and people wanting to work in the space, Mickey and Wes, you made the transition. One, come live your purpose and sleep with a smile on your face every day. That I can guarantee you that can wake up with a spring in your step saying, let me take on another day and figure out what difference I can make. But having said that, I think, the challenges are so many because the problems are aplenty, right? So there are never a dearth of challenges. There's never a dearth of learning. And if you do it right, it need not be very economically hard, right? So I think I get a lot of conversations today with young people, with older people, career shifts, etc., saying, hey, should I spend my time here? And I say, absolutely. And to Mickey and Wes's point, I've been in this space now for 10 years and I haven't regretted it for a single minute, right? So if there is a way to live life, maybe this is the way, and come join us would be the pitch.
Yeah, that's great. And Mickey, just conscious of time, super quickly.
Yeah, my guy I work with that I've known for 25 years, Murali Vilagante, is famous for saying he used to live the life of business, and now he lives the business of life. So I think that makes a big difference. Think with your head. I had a conversation recently with a 25-year-old about joining our company, the experiences that he's going to get. I said, think with your head, but let your heart lead you in doing the right thing. So again, it's wonderful. Appreciate the opportunity to talk. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much. And, I want to thank all the panelists for today's talk. On a personal level, it was great connecting with each and every one of you to really understand your mission and what keeps you going on a daily basis. I truly think you're building something special, and I hope this was inspirational for our audience. And with that, Anu, back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madan, Gayatri, Wes, Mickey, and Sahej for this insightful panel.